Well, hello friends and welcome to Kalos. Today I want to attempt a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon X using only the Grass type. Game Freak is notorious for their Grass, Fire, Water trio, and it's in my opinion that these are like Game Freak's children. You have the Fire type, which is the oldest, the practice, the child that everybody looks up to. Then you have the Water type, the youngest, Game Freak's favorite, and then of course you have the forgotten middle child, the Grass type. In games like Fire Red, where the gym leader was a rock type trainer, choosing the grass type starter was always great, and so was choosing the water type starter. And that's true for Fire Red Leaf Green, Hoenn, Sinnoh. But as I've played these monotype Nuzlockes, I've come to realize that the fire and grass starters typically get the short end of the stick. Kalos is not very fair to grass types, so I am very excited to see how this run is going to play out. The fire type run that we did felt very balanced and very fair. We didn't have as many encounters as we are with the grass type run here, but we didn't have that many struggles. We're going to get a lot of encounters in this run, but even the first gym could potentially be a struggle. The late game Team Flare stuff, Wolfric, and the Elite Four are all going to pose big threats to our team eventually, so we have our work cut out for us. Now here we're meeting our four rivals, Serena, Shauna, Tierno, and Trevor. None of them we can name, so we're going to nickname ourselves Algorithm, because we're trying to beat the algorithm both in-game and in real life. Now the in-game algorithm is a paradox that I don't want to get into, but the real-life algorithm I need your help to defeat. You can help me defeat it by liking the video, commenting on the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting the notification bell, and of course sharing this video with anybody you deem fit. I do want to thank you guys for the continued support. The videos have been doing great. The channel is just shy of 4,000 subscribers. That is absolutely amazing, and I cannot thank you enough. Now, of course, Chespin is our starter. We nicknamed him One. No, not the One, just One. He has a lax plus defense and minus special defense nature. Never used this Pokemon before, so I'm excited to see what it can do. We can quickly pick up our second encounter in the Santaloon Forest, a Pansage named 2. It has a relaxed plus defense and minus speed nature. Now, taking on a Bug-type gym leader as the first gym leader seems pretty easy on the surface. However, if we dive deeper into Viola's team, her fully evolved Vivillon with Stab Super Effective Infestation is very scary. We can't switch out if we get tagged with it, so we need a plan, and that plan is rollout. It's never good to lock yourself into a move, but we don't have much of another strategy. After taking a couple of bubbles from the Surskit, we can knock it out with a second rollout, gaining a level in the process, only taking 10 ticks of damage throughout the first part of this battle. If we connect here after a Harden from Vivillon, we win, and of course, we don't. We get hit with a tackle that does some minimal damage, and then we start our rollout chain. We then get tagged with that infestation that takes us down to 12 HP, but we connect with a second rollout, knocking out the Vivillon, winning us the first badge. Between the first and second gym here in Kalos, we have a huge stretch of things that we have to do. So I'm chilling on a bench, watching the fountain, just relaxing before I have to dive into the different encounters that we have, the different items that we're going to get. There's a ton. Out on Route 4, we have a bunch of items to get and an encounter that is going to take a little bit of time for us to get. It's a low % chance that we find it. Now, whilst we look for it and gather the items, I am traveling once again for work. The voiceover that was done in the last video and this video in its entirety is being recorded here in Orlando, Florida. Orlando is kind of special to me because when my wife and I had our honeymoon, we went to Kissimmee, which is not that far away. We spent a week down here, we did a bunch of different things, and we had a blast. There are a lot of crazy things that happen, life lessons that were learned that I'll get into later. We don't have time for now because I don't want to babble too much. A few years after that, we took the kids down here. It's been about every other year, every 3 years or so, we come down here. And as I was driving past all the different places that we hung out at, because I'm literally staying right across the highway from Universal Studios, I was saddened. And I sat here in the hotel and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. And it's simple. It's because I don't have my wife. It's because I don't have my kids. This state is kind of special in that way. I don't typically come this way for work. I've been to a ton of other states and none of those feel like this. This has just been one of those special states that I've only ever been to with her, and now that I'm not with her, it's it's saddening. Does that make sense? Like, I'm a little down and out because she's not here. I know the fun that I could have, but I've got to switch gears and realize we're down here for work. We'll get through this and we will go on to the next one because these jobs don't last forever. We battled all of the trainers that we could on Route 4. We're actually still searching for our next encounter, but we have an evolution on the team with one evolving into the middle stage Quilladin. Again, a Pokemon I've never used. It is a pure grass type, and I know when this thing evolves into a Chestnut, it gains the fighting type, which is an interesting type combination I'm excited to use. And after like 20 minutes with the speed up on, we finally find a Badoo on Route 4 that we named 3. It has a careful plus special defense and minus special attack nature. We then meet the beautiful Professor Sexymore, who gives us a Bulbasaur after defeating him that we nicknamed 4. It has a lonely plus attack and minus defense nature. On Route 5, we pick up the cutest Pokemon I have ever seen, a Skiddo that we nicknamed 5. It has a bold plus defense and minus attack nature. This thing is absolutely adorable. 4 then of course evolves into its middle stage in Ivysaur, which is absolutely a beast of a Pokemon. On Route 6, we catch Oddish that we nicknamed 6. It has a gentle plus special defense and minus defense nature. The names are not based on the routes that we caught him on, that's just pure coincidence. In a Horde, on Route 7, we catch 7 the Hoppip. It has a lonely plus attack and minus defense nature. This Pokemon was not that great in Generation 2, but we'll see how it does here in Kalos. Of course, as we're running through and getting all of these different encounters, we are battling trainers and we do have a few evolutions. 7 evolves into a Skiploom. Again, not a Pokemon that did great in Generation 2. As I said before, I am very excited to see if and what it can do here in Kalos. Before our next encounter, in Glittering Cave, we find a Ferroseed named 8. It has a timid plus speed and minus attack nature. This Pokemon is absolutely amazing. It's going to be a very big staple on the team. And just before taking on Grant, we have the final evolution for now, as 3 evolves from a Badoo into a Roselia. We won't get a Shiny Stone for a while, so we'll be stuck with this Pokemon, but it is a very good one nonetheless. Now, you might assume that just because Grant here has Rock-type Pokemon and we have Grass-type Pokemon that we've got this in the bag, and that assumption would be incorrect. We lead 8 against Amora, and we have the Iron Barb's ability and the Rocky Helmet that you get inside the gate check between Ambertown and Route 9. Tag all of that with the takedown recoil damage, and that is quite a bit of chip. Gyro Ball then takes Amora out, and it seems like things are going very easy. We're not paralyzed because it didn't go for Thunder Wave as the Tyrunt comes out, but it could still flinch us with Bite, and it doesn't. Takes a little bit of chip from the Rocky Helmet, Iron Barb's tag team, and then decent damage from Gyro Ball, but we're too low of health to stay in, so we need to swap. I do decide to bring in 4, thinking I can KO this thing after a bite with a Razor Leaf, but I was sadly mistaken. I should have set up a Leech Seed. We leave it at a sliver of health, and we get taken down to 7 HP, risking 4 unnecessarily. I know that Grant's going to go for a Hyper Potion, so I decide to set up a Leech Seed, and we connect, gaining a little bit of health back, but I cannot stay in as another bite will KO us. So we need to swap around. I decide to bring in 5 to see what 5 can do. I'm excited to use this Pokemon. It is absolutely adorable. Rock Tomb lowers our speed but does minimal damage, especially with the Leech Seed recovery. Again, we're going to go for a Razor Leaf because we don't have much else at this point. And Bite takes us down to 31 HP. Not bad. We would have survived a crit there. Seeing that we're going to put this thing in healing range if we go for another Razor Leaf Leech Seed combination, I need to swap again, just to get a little more chip damage from Leech Seed, so I decide to bring in 7. We get hit with a Bite down to 31 HP, would have KO'd if it had crit, but then we can fire off a Bullet Seed that luckily gets enough hits in, 3 to be exact, to take out the Tyrunt. That was much more difficult than it needed to be. Now we're doing some training, and I've held off the evolution of 7 until level 32, which is the level cap, because it learns acrobatics. It learns it at level 34 as a jump bluff, but now we have a base 110 power stab move, provided we don't hold an item. That is going to make this Pokemon so much better than it ever was in Johto. Very excited to use this Pokemon. In the Tower of Mastery, we now have to battle Serena. Serena is going to be a problem because we chose the Chespin, so she has the Fennekin line. Eventually, the Delphox is going to know Mystical Fire and Flamethrower, spelling potential disaster for our entire team. In this battle, it only knows Fire Spin and Psybeam, so not as dangerous. The Fake Out does get the poison from our Poison Point ability, and my strategy here, as the Meowstic sets up a light screen, is to set up 2 layers of Toxic Spikes so that we get the badly poisoned damage as the rest of her teammates come out, and maybe we can KO some Pokemon with Venoshock. Unfortunately, Venoshock doesn't quite take out the Meowstic, and then we finally get hit with a Psychic-type move, leaving us at 26 HP. I thought we'd have got hit with that a long time ago. I need to swap here. I could take this thing out, but the best bet is just to bring 8 in, who's going to resist the incoming Psybeam, and then Meowstic is going to fall to the toxic damage. 8 does no rollout, and that is a strategy to take on the Braixen, but locking yourself again in a move is a very dangerous thing to do in Nuzlocke, and I thought about it for just a minute, and then decided it's not a great idea, especially if I get confused from Psybeam, so we might as well swap and bring in 5. 5 can learn rollout via level up. Bulldoze via level up. We of course get confused. This is why I switched instead of locking ourselves into rollout, and I need to risk it getting hit with a Psybeam. If I hurt myself, it's no big deal, we can switch out, but I don't, and we get off a Bulldoze, lowering the Braixen's speed. This is where things get very risky here. I could get knocked out from hurting myself and a Psybeam, but we break through to knock out the Braixen with 1 more Bulldoze. I'm stepping on my words because this was a pain in the butt to voice over. As the Absol comes out, it gets badly poisoned, and I decide to bring in 4. 4 is going to get hit with a quick attack on the swap in, of course it is, and then we're going to get out prioritized one more time with 1 more quick attack, doing some pretty pathetic damage as we can take it out with a Venoshock. Nice. Before taking on Karina, we head to Route 12 and we catch an Execute named 9. It has a hasty plus speed and minus defense nature. Unfortunately, we catch this thing at level 24, so it will learn Confusion at level 27, but if we could have got it at like level 17 and evolved it with the Leaf Stone, it would have learned Psyshock as an Executor. We have a decent round of evolutions before taking on the 3rd gym leader, starting with 9 and a Leaf Stone we found back on Route 8, evolving this thing from a group of eggs to a egg coconut tree thing? I don't know. Having a Psychic type on the team is going to be great when we start taking on Team Flare and their Poison type Golbats. Next up on the docket is 4. Reaching level 32 evolves it from its middle stage Ivysaur into a Venusaur, which is an absolute awesome Pokemon. The OG, the beast, this dinosaur plant thing. It's a great Pokemon nonetheless. Last evolution, of course, is Skiddo, evolving into a Go-Goat, where this thing goes from being one of the cutest damn things you've ever seen to, you know, like an elderly dog. You still love it, it's still got that puppy face, but it's just not a puppy anymore. The biggest reason we picked up 9 on Route 12 for Karina's gym is so that we could take on the gym trainers, because all of our Pokemon were at the level cap. Since it did so good going through the gym, I decided to lead it against the Mienfoo, and after taking a priority Fake Out, we can one-shot the Mienfoo with a stab super effective Confusion. Out comes the Machoke. We should be able to knock this thing out with a single Confusion, but unfortunately it was a range and we don't get it. We get hit with a critical hit Rock Tomb, lowering our speed. Karina uses a Hyper Potion, and then we get the favorable range with that stab super effective Confusion, one-shotting the Machoke. A lot of extra steps in that wasn't needed. The Hawlucha comes out, and this is where I bring my secret weapon out. We take 9 out, and we bring 7 in. We tank a power-up punch on the swap in, doing 10 ticks of damage, and then we can fire off that stab 110 base-powered super effective acrobatics, one-shotting the Hawlucha, winning us the 3rd gym badge. Now, if you want to get technical and you want to be an ass about it, this is the end of the run, because we are forced into a battle with Karina at the top of the Tower of Mastery to show off Mega Evolutions. We have to use a Lucario in this battle. We have no other choice. We're not using grass types. That is not a grass type. So realistically, in Pokemon X and Y, unless you're using Fighting or Steel type, this is the end of the run. No. I'm of course kidding. We get shown what the Megas are here. We get our Mega Ring. We have two potential megas for this run, the Abomasnow and the Venusaur. I'm probably not going to use either one in this entire run. Megas are super cool, but I really don't need them, and there's only like 2 instances where the other trainers Mega evolve their Pokemon, the third battle with Lysander, and then of course the champion battle with Diantha. I really don't see the point in it, so we're not going to use it. Now, after beating the Lucario with Lucario, Lucario wants to stay with Zap. We can, of course, tell it no, and then this thing just sits at the Tower of Mastery until we delete our save file and start our next run. Poor Pupper. I really do feel bad about this, but sorry, buddy. The best part of this whole damn run is we get to ride a Skiddo. Yes, yes, yes. We need this to technically get the Shiny Stone to evolve 3 into a Roserade, but still, we get to ride a Skiddo. And would you guess the next thing that happens is we evolve 3 into a Beastly Roserade. Once we can get to Dendemil Town, this Pokemon can learn Weather Ball, and that is going to be a key move in completing this run. There is a strategy in place, and this Pokemon is a huge part of it. Serena challenges us to a battle just outside of Ramos's gym. Nothing's changed here, her Braixen still only has Psybeam and Fire Spin, so we can kind of develop our strategy here, and I think we're just going to go with the Toxic Spikes and possibly Venoshock strategy that we used before. Meowstic sets up a light screen turn 1. It is dangerous to do 2 layers of spikes because we are weak to psychic moves, but Disarming Voice doesn't do much to us. Venoshock unfortunately doesn't do much to Meowstic with the light screen up, and then Psybeam would have never KO'd us even if it had crit, so we were fine to stay in there. I need to swap, and I decided to bring 1 in. This may have been a bad idea. We take neutral damage from psychic type moves rather. It just goes for Disarming Voice. We're not going to KO this thing, and we're not faster, so not a great strategy here. Psybeam does a significant amount of damage. Needle Arm doesn't take it out. So now, let's bring in the secret weapon, 7. 7 is a monster. It's a pretty fast Pokemon, and it hits decent. And if you can get those 2 combinations with the Acrobatics move that's doubled in power if you don't hold an item, you're going to have a good time. We knock out the Meowstic from the health that it was at, and this of course is going to bring in the Absol. It gets poisoned on the swap in. It does out-prioritize us, of course, with a quick attack. That, why not? It gets a critical hit, and then we don't take it out from Acrobatics. It's on a sliver of health after the poison, and an idea pops up in my head. We can bring in 5 that knows Dig, and this is going to be a much better way to deal with Braixen. We do get hit with a critical hit slash, of course, why not, on the swap in, but that's fine. We're still sitting in prime position as this Pokemon comes out. We want to learn Bulk Up. I'm not going to learn it. I'm not going to use setup moves. I'm trying not to use them in my Nuzlocks going forward. I haven't been using them in quite a while. It's just too easy sometimes. The Braixen comes in, gets poisoned. We outspeed it so we can set up a Dig. It's going to get a little bit of chip damage from the poison, and unfortunately, because Dig is not stab, doesn't KO it. So we get hit with a nasty little Psybeam, down to 88 HP. We were never in any real danger, and we can take this thing out with a Seed Bomb, winning us the second Serena fight. Next up is Ramos, and he is a fellow Grass-type trainer and our arch-rival in this run. We are going to lead, of course, with our secret weapon 7, and he leads with a Jumpluff of his own. It is a Jumpluff v Jumpluff. Ours outspeeds and hits a hell of a lot harder, one-shotting. There was a couple other avenues we could have taken with this run, like having 9 out there for the Weeping Bell. But why not? Acrobatics, we're going to one-shot every single one of his Pokemon, inserting our dominance as the Grass-type trainer of Kalos, and that was a very easy 4th gym badge. My least favorite place in all of Kalos is Route 13. I hate this damn route with the unavoidable Pokemon in the ground. They all have arena traps, so you can't run from them. We have to do the Team Flare stuff in the powerhouse. We have to find the stupid badge with the dowsing machine. And then this trainer right here has a Houndoom and a Golbat that could spell disaster for our team. Not something I'm typically worried about, but in this run I am. Luckily for us, I could go for Mega Evolutions. I do have the stone on Venusaur here, but I never end up using it. Venoshock does well over half. It just goes for beat up, so one more Venoshock can take it out. The next Pokemon that comes out is his Golbat that has Acrobatics. It's not guaranteed that it's going to go for Acrobatics, but going through my list of Pokemon here, potentially sacrificing one of these Pokemon is a very, very nail-biting procedure. I ultimately decide to bring in 9, who comes in on an air cutter. Doesn't quite do half, and we can now fire off a stab super effective confusion that doesn't KO. We survive on 15 HP from another air cutter. We were so damn lucky in this battle. Could have been very different. Hey look, I left my plate in the powerhouse. I should pick that up and take that home if I want to eat dinner. I normally don't show the battles with the Team Flare admins, but one here almost got one shot from a Fire Fang from this Houndoom. If it had crit, we would have lost him. I need to bring something in here, and it is a very hard decision, potentially risking one of these Pokemon. I can't risk anything that I want at the end. I've got to figure this out. I do bring 5 in, and luckily for us, 5 does tank a Fire Fang much better, but still, that does a lot of damage. Luckily, it didn't crit. We would have survived, and we get a little bit of health back from the Leech Seed, and we're going to be able to take this Houndoom out. But these battles are very scary, and I shouldn't be going through this much up and down and up and down. Especially when that thing outspeeds, which I didn't know it would. That was a best guess, and a very lucky on our part. We almost lost 5 here. And while we were in the powerhouse dealing with all that stuff, one reached level 36, where it evolves into a Chestnut. Gains the fighting type, again, a Pokemon I have never used. Excited to see what it can do. I'm always excited to see what the starters of their respective regions can really do in these runs. Lamont is the 5th gym leader and an electric type trainer, and in every run that I've ever been in, the electric type trainer should never be counted out. He resists us and we resist him, but he's got a decent team that could do some damage, and Emolga is part flying type. It's probably going to stay in and go for Aerial Ace, so I go for a Rock Tomb, lowering this thing's speed just in case, and we get hit with the aforementioned Aerial Ace. Would have KO'd if it had crit. Just barely. This is going to burn Clement's potions. We got it in a heal lock here, dropping it low, dropping its speed. He burns both of his hyper potions, which is really nice to do early on, rather this than the Magneton, and we can take this thing out with a couple of more Rock Tombs. Very nice showing from one here as it fully evolved into a Chestnut. His next Pokemon is going to be a Magneton. This thing is going to set up the electric terrain, so I'm free to stay in and do whatever I want. I'm going to break it sturdy with a Rock Tomb, let it set up the electric terrain, and then we are going to implement my plan for the rest of the battle. Electric terrain is scary, but again, we resist electric type moves, so we should be fine. We swap in 5, and 5 does get hit with a Thunderbolt on the swap in, but it does very little damage. We then actually outspeed and can go for the quad super effective Dig, which of course one-shots the Magneton since its sturdy was broken. Heliolisk is going to come out. This thing does do a little bit of damage with Thunderbolt, or a little bit more because of the electric terrain, but we can dig underground. The electric terrain dissipates, and we don't quite one-shot it with Dig. Again, that's perfectly fine. Thunderbolt is going to do a lot less damage without the electric terrain, so we're free to stay in, never dead to a crit, and take it out with the Seed Bomb. On Route 14, Serena wants another battle, and I have a little bit of a plan here. We're going to try to implement it. The first thing that we're going to do is try to Leech Seed the Meowstic, but of course we have to get hit with the priority Fake Out. Then we can set up the Leech Seed. I'm going to put this Pokemon asleep, and I want it to stay asleep for as long as possible, whittling it down with Leech Seed. Then we're going to bring out 5, who we taught Rain Dance, and hopefully take out the Delphox with Dig, because Braxton has evolved, and Delphox has Mystical Fire, making this a very, very dangerous battle. Now, Meowstic does stay asleep for a couple of turns, but ultimately this damn thing does wake up and hit us with a stab super effective Psychic that would have KO'd if it had crit. That was a huge risk on 4 here that we didn't need to do, but this Pokemon is really not going to be at the end game, so I'm making some risks here as we go through. We've got to get through these arena battles. We take a Psychic on the swap in, but we stay healthy because of Leech Seed, and I have to set up Rain Dance. I really want to knock this Pokemon out, but there's nothing that we can do. Unfortunately, we're outsped, so that means we're going to tank 2 more Psychics before we take out the Meowstic, putting us at pretty low health. The next Psychic takes us down low to 60 HP. I thought it was 64 HP before we take this thing out with a Seed Bomb. This is not great health. The 64 HP was after we leveled up. See, I was correct. Because we have to go for Dig, but we get outsped and hit with a Psybeam to 24 HP. What? Holy, we don't take out the Delphox either. I'm at a scramble in this point. I don't really know what to do, as there's a couple of these Pokemon I cannot sacrifice. Ultimately, I decide to bring in 7 because I think it can tank a Mystical Fire in the rain much better, and I was correct. Never dead to a crit there. The rain stops, and we can take this thing out with an Acrobatics, but wow, we almost lost a Pokemon in this battle. The Absol comes out. It's her last Pokemon. Of course, this thing out-prioritizes us with a Quick Attack, and then of course Acrobatics doesn't take it out. I'm dead to a crit here, so I've got to swap, and I definitely do not want to lose 7, so I bring in 1 to finish off the battle. It just goes for a Swords Dance, so that was a free swap in, and we can take this thing out. Spiky Shield, I was trying something here. Not quite enough. We leave it on a Sliver. So now I have to tank another attack before we finally take it out with a Seed Bomb. Just before taking on Valerie and her Fairy-type Pokemon, we have an evolution with 8 evolving into a Ferrothorn. This Pokemon has been amazing, being a counter to Flying-type Pokemon. Now, Valerie and her Fairy types, what can I say? We have a Steel type, we have a couple of Poison types. I mean, her Mawile is part Steel type, so it's immune to our Poison types, but there is a plan we can set up on the Mawile, hitting it with the Leech Seed and then tanking a very weak Crunch. I could go for Sleep Powder at this point, but what's the point? We're not going to take much damage from this Pokemon, and it likes to set up with the Iron Defense, so we might as well swap in and do our ultimate setup and sweep the rest of the team. Iron Defense on the swap in, as I said, and now we can set up a layer of Toxic Spikes. I only need 1. I just need the Poison, not the Toxic Poison. Another Iron Defense doesn't matter, as the Leech Seed has sapped this thing low enough that we should be able to take it out with a Mega Drain, tank a Crunch, which is fine, and then it goes down to the Leech Seed damage. That's all we needed. Our next 2 Pokemon, Mr. Mime and Sylveon, are going to come out. They're going to get poisoned on the swap in, and we're going to be able to hit them with a double-powered Stab Super Effective Venoshock, winning us the battle. There's nothing more to say about this battle. I love the fact that Poison types were strengthened by the introduction of Fairy types. It's my favorite thing because Poison types are, of course, my favorite type. On Route 15, while surfing, you can run into Lombres, which we caught, nicknamed him 10, and it has a Lax plus defense minus special defense nature. It also has the Rain Dish ability instead of Swift Swim, which is what it is. There are a couple of routes that we could have caught other Pokemon on. On Route 14, we could have got a Bellsprout, which I don't want to add to the team. I already have enough Poison Grass types. In the Lost Hotel, we could have searched around for a Rotom, but I played with one in the Fire type run. We're not going to play with one in the Grass type run, as we have so many Pokemon to choose from, and we're probably not going to catch all of them. Heading to Vernal Avenue in Lumio City, we can come across the Rock Shop. In here, we can buy some evolutionary stones like the Water Stone to evolve 10 into a Ludicolo, and this is going to be our ultimate counter to Fire-type Pokemon. And of course, we give the Water Stone to 10, promptly evolving it into a Dancing Pineapple with a weird sombrero. I don't know what Hoenn was doing with some of their Pokemon, but I do know that this one was very important for us to catch, so we have that counter to Fire types. Just before heading into Olympia's gym in Anistar City, we have another battle with Serena, and this is the second to last one. But now we have Ludicolo. Against her Meowstic, we of course get hit with that priority fake out, and then we are going to set up the rain. Now we are outsped. I need to do a little bit more speed EV investment. We get hit with a nasty Shadow Ball that drops our special. That is very annoying, but Rain Dish is going to keep us a little bit healthy. We get hit with another Shadow Ball that takes us down to 40 HP before we fire off a nasty Surf that doesn't knock out the Meowstic. Well, that's unfortunate, because now we have to swap, and we're not sitting in good position, but I do have a plan. In Dendemil Town, we can relearn moves via Heart Scales, and 3 can learn Weather Ball. We don't need it right here, as we can take out the Meowstic with a Giga Drain, getting back the health we just lost from a Disarming Voice. But as the Delphox comes out, we can now fire off a Weather Ball that in the rain is a base 100 power water type move. We outspeed and we one-shot. That is going to be a key thing that happens later, as long as we can keep this Pokemon alive. I have a plan for the end game. I always go through those plans when I start these runs. We just got to get to the end and see if we can implement them. Now, I didn't learn synthesis because we don't really need it, and out comes the Absol. The rain did stop and we are in Anastar City, so it is hailing, so we're going to take a little bit of chip. I could reset it up, but why? Giga Drain on the Absol does a bunch of damage, and then a crit Night Slash with the hail chip takes us down to 18 HP. That's not good. I definitely need to swap out, and I decide to bring in 8, because 8 is going to get hit with a Night Slash, and the Iron Barbs and the Rocky Helmet is going to knock out the Absol. Absolutely phenomenal. The only difference between this battle and the other ones is she has a 4th Pokemon, which is a Jolteon. We resist, she resists. There's not a whole hell of a lot that we can do here. It's going to fire off discharges, outspeeding us, doing some chip, and Gyro Ball actually doesn't do that much. Again, not very effective. Chip damage brings us to 78 HP. I'm going to go for Strength this time. Discharge does a decent amount of damage down to 58 HP, and Strength could take this thing out with one more hit, but I'm sitting pretty low and don't want to risk it, so I decide to do what I should have done early on and bring in 5. 5 still has Dig, should have just brought you in. A double kick. We could have taken this thing out with chip damage. Doesn't matter. Hail chip damage brings it low, and a Seed Bomb is going to take it out after we tank a double kick. I then head over to Route 17 and pick up a Snover that we nicknamed 11. It has a Jolly plus speed and minus special attack nature, and this Pokemon is critical and vital for the in-game stuff that I have planned. And probably the last evolution that you're going to see in this run, 11 evolves into a Abomasnow, which we can use a Mega Stone on this thing and have a Mega Abomasnow, but again, I don't really need to. I don't really want to. It's not going to make or break the run. Probably the biggest reason we grabbed 11 was so that we could lead out against Olympia. She does have a Sigilyph that is part flying type and does have stab, super effective flying type moves. However, with a little bit of speed EV investments, 11 actually outspeeds and can one-shot with stab, super effective ice moves. We relearned Ice Punch from the move relearner in Dendemil Town. Slowking then comes out next, and it is very slow, but it is also a king, and it also goes down to a stab, super effective Wood Hammer. Very nice. That's 2 in and 2 out. Now, Meowstic is the last Pokemon that Olympia has. It is going to outspeed us, but I think we can still take this thing out. We get hit with a Fake Out for a little bit of chip. Snow Warning is doing a little bit of chip with Hail, and then we get outsped and hit with a nasty Psychic to 35 HP. I'm not sure that a priority Ice Shard would take out the Meowstic from here, and I don't want to risk it anyway, so we're going to swap in 8. 8 can take these Psychic attacks much, much better. A critical hit Psychic does not do that much damage, as we see there. We are going to get outsped, and I wasn't sure which move would potentially knock out the Meowstic, so we tank a Shadow Ball and fire off a Power Whip that does get the KO because it is stab. Very nice. Now we find ourselves completing the Team Flare storyline stuff, and we have to face Lysander 3 times. I normally don't show these battles, however, he's got a decent team against our grass types. The Mienfoo is not a good Pokemon. It goes down to a single Acrobatics, but the Pyroar that comes out has Fire Blast and is very, very scary. At this point, it does have Rivalry, which could benefit us in a little bit. Also, missing a Fire Blast benefits us greatly. We get hit with a critical hit Fire Blast that gets the burn the very next turn, so we were lucky and then unlucky, and then lucky because we knocked out the Pyroar in a single surf. Out next is going to be the Murkrow that does have flying type moves like Aerial Ace, so the best thing that we can do here is swap into 8. I need a good plan going into the future battles, and I think we're going to have to get closer to the level cap so that we can survive this and do this deathless. Aerial Ace doesn't do much to us, and then a combination of the Iron Barbs and the Rocky Helmet does some chip. We're going to set up a rollout here. Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet does a little bit more chip, and then rollout takes Murkrow to a sliver. One more foul play knocks out the Murkrow from the chip of Iron Barbs, but we're still trying to go for rollout, so it misses, breaking our rollout streak. That's perfectly fine. As the Gyarados comes out, we wouldn't outspeed, and we need to swap because it has Earthquake. I should pivot in 7 here, but I decide to go straight into 11, who can tank the Earthquake very nicely because it's not very effective. Now, unfortunately for me, I forgot that this Gyarados has Iron Head, so I go for an Ice Punch and it does decent damage. It gets the freeze, but immediately thaws out and drops us to 19 HP with a super effective Iron Head. Whoops, we almost lost 11 there, but we go unpunished. Now, we did learn a few things in the first Lysander battle that we're going to implement into this battle. His Mienfoo is now fully evolved into a Mienshao, but that doesn't change anything because 7 with Stab super effective acrobatics one-shots. I did do some leveling up and training of the team so that we outlevel his Pokemon by quite a bit. We now know U-turn, so we can U-turn out on the Pyroar and bring 10 in. 10 is going to survive a Fire Blast even if it crits, and we should be able to outspeed the Pyroar this time so we don't have to tank 2 of them, as a critical hit would take us out. A single Surf takes out the Pyroar, and this is awesome. Honchkrow now comes out because it's fully evolved, and rather than swapping in 8 like we did before, I think I'm going to bring in 11. This proves to be very dangerous, as a critical hit Aerial Ace would have taken us out, but never punished as it doesn't crit and we survive. A priority Ice Shard is going to be enough to take out the Honchkrow, so that is perfectly fine. The Gyarados is his last Pokemon, and this one doesn't Mega, so we need to do something against this Pokemon. It has Iron Head, so we're not going to stay in. We're going to swap into 1. 1 hasn't seen a lot of screen time, and this is a great counter here. We tank the Iron Head no problem. We do actually outspeed, and we have a super effective move in Rock Throw. We can't quite get Rock Slide until we can use Waterfall out of battle, but Rock Throw does enough damage. We get hit with an Outrage that does very minimal damage, surprisingly, and then we can connect with 1 more Rock Throw and take this thing out, provided the Rock Throw actually connects. Does it? Yes, it does. Awesome. Since the second battle with Lysander went so well, we're going to implement a lot of the same strategy against this version of Lysander, whatever that Doc Ock thing is. And against his Mienshao, we lead 7, outspeed, acrobatics, one-shot. Now we are closely approaching the level cap, which is a little bit concerning as we still got a lot of gameplay before we get to the next gym, but we will cross that bridge. A U-turn out ensures that 7 stays alive and brings 10 in. Now 10 should be able to survive a critical hit from Fire Blast, but let's hope it misses. It doesn't, and it crits to 35 HP. We then outspeed and can fire off a Stab super effective Surf, knocking out the Pyroar. Very nice. His next teammate is going to, of course, be the Honchkrow, and rather than swapping in 8 like we did last time, I'm just going to bring 11 in. 11 should be able to survive a critical hit Aerial Ace, which we tank an Aerial Ace after the Hail, and it crits to 33 HP. 2 crits in a row. A priority Ice Shard is enough to take out the Honchkrow from there. This was a very scary battle. We almost lost a couple of Pokemon, but I did do some calcs and make sure our levels were on the up and up. Now as the Gyarados comes in, we soak up the Intimidate. This thing is going to Mega Evolve, losing its Flying type and gaining the Dark type. So we'll swap 1 in like we did last time, watch the cool Mega animation, and then we will get hit with an Iron Head that we tank very nicely. And now we can go for a Hammer Arm, which is stab and super effective against the Gyarados. The only problem is it's not 100% accurate. We connect though, and we one-shot, winning our battle against Lysander, defeating Team Flare once and for all. Now leaving Corway Town, Professor Sycamore wants to have a battle. He has the 3 Kanto starters, and they are fully evolved. Charizard being a Fire Flying type is very dangerous and could easily KO some of the teammates on our team. However, against the Venusaur, we're leading 11 and a plan, and it's not Brute Force and Ignorance like most of my plans. We set up the Hail with Snow Warning, and now we're going to pivot into 3. The synergy between 11's Snow Warning and 3's Weather Ball makes this Pokemon just so versatile, and it has been a vital part of the team going forward. It's going to be a vital member of the team in the Elite Four. A base 100 power Ice type attack from Weather Ball one-shots the Venusaur. Charizard is going to come out next. It does have Fire type moves, but it could go for Wing Attack, so we've put the leftovers to keep us healthy. We should be able to survive either or. We set up the Rain, and Charizard opts to go for Flame Burst, which is perfect, nerfed with the Rain. Now we can fire off that base 100 power Water type move in the Rain, one-shotting the Charizard, showing off just how great this Pokemon is. That crit didn't matter. As Blastoise comes out, we're going to be able to one-shot it with Stab super effective. Giga Drain? Yes, Giga Drain. And that is it. We won. Now, going across the bridge on Route 19, we have the Rival Gauntlet. It's a back-to-back rival battle. There is a heal between the second and third battles, but we needed to plan accordingly. This is a very dangerous battle. Delcatty just goes for Charm, and 2 Surfs knock it out. Our next Pokemon is Goodra. This thing has Sap Sipper, so we do have to pay attention and not hit this thing with a Grass-type move, and I opt to swap in 11. 11 is going to swap in and set up the Hail with Snow Warning, and we're going to get hit with a Sludge Wave that, if it had crit, could have KO'd. I didn't do any calcs, I just did a ton of planning. An Ice Punch then knocks out the Goodra very nicely, and her last Pokemon, of course, is Greninja. We have the type advantage, but not wanting to risk 11 further, I decide to swap in my secret weapon, 7. Greninja opts to set up a double team. We both get hit with a little bit of chip from Hail, and now we can set off a Bullet Seed that does get 3 turns to knock out the Greninja. Very nice. The first time that I did this gauntlet, I was not paying attention, running full steam ahead, and I actually lost my Miltank in this battle, so we did do quite a bit of preparation as far as figuring out who I wanted to lead with and how we were going to take on these Pokemon. Tierno is a very scary trainer as he leads with a Talonflame that outspeeds most of my team and can one-shot with a critical hit. We don't get crit and can fire back with a Surf that one-shots the Talonflame. That was the scariest battle. Trevor's Aerodactyl is also very scary. As Roserade comes out, the plan here is to swap into 11 and set up the Hail with Snow Warning. Tank a Petal Blizzard, which we should be able to tank very nicely. We do. Can't really survive another one, so we need to pivot out, and we're going to bring in 3. I figured out this strategy with Snow Warning and Weather Ball back when we did our Sinnoh playthrough of grass-only Pokemon, and it is a great strategy. It comes through here as we tank a very weak Petal Blizzard because we're quad resistant to it, and then can fire off that Weather Ball, knocking out the Roserade very, very easily. Nice. His last Pokemon is a Crawdaunt that is going to go down to any one of my Pokemon. It does not matter. Its Dark typing doesn't help it out in this battle. I just go for a Giga Drain and we one-shot. Very nice. The last trainer, of course, is Trevor. His only scary Pokemon is his speedy Aerodactyl. His Raichu is not a concern. As a matter of fact, 10 can stay in and just fire off Surfs as we resist Thunderbolt. We're not going to one-shot the Raichu. It's not going to do much damage to us, so a second Surf is going to take it out. This brings out his scariest Pokemon, the Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl and Talonflame, whole reason I led with 10. It whiffs a Supersonic, and we get the one-shot with a Stab super effective Surf. Okay, that was a little anticlimactic, but it was still scary going into this battle. Florges is a Fairy-type Pokemon, so I decide to bring in 3. As I bring in 3, Florges goes for Confide. That lowers our special attack. I don't really want to deal with this, so I just decide to swap in 8. 8 comes in on a Misty Terrain. Perfectly fine. We are going to get outsped next turn and hit with a Moonblast, but Moonblast doesn't do much to us, and then a Stab super effective Iron Head one-shots. Now you may notice in the last battle that a couple of our Pokemon reached the level cap. So I've pulled from the bench because we have quite a large bench to pull from. We brought 9 back in, we have 5, we have 6 fully evolved from an Oddish into a Bellossom, and we have 2 that is now a Simisage. I've basically benched the Pokemon that I want going to the Elite Four that are very weak to Ice types and brought in some other Pokemon to at least get us through the gym. The battle with Wolfric is very dangerous, so I've brought Pokemon that either take neutral damage or have super effective moves against his Ice-type Pokemon. We do have 6 and 2 off the bench on the team just in case we need some swap-in fodder. Now against the Abomasnow, I lead 8, and the plan is to go for Stab super effective Iron Heads, but we get frozen off an Ice Beam turn 1. That just ruined my entire plans for this battle. I do stay in and try to unthaw, but unfortunately after a couple of Ice Beams and some chip damage from the hail, there's not much that we can do, and I cannot afford to stay in and risk 8's life here. I should have swapped in one of those fodder Pokemon that we spoke about moments ago, but I opt to go for one. Trying to do this deathless, and an Ice Beam would have taken us out if it had crit. That was a very unnecessary risk. I decide to bring in 11 at this point. 11 is going to take neutral damage from Ice-type moves, and Abomasnow is going to take neutral damage from us. The hail does stop, which is really nice, not that it matters. Ice Punch takes Abomasnow to half, and then an Ice Beam drops us below half. One more Ice Punch is enough to knock out the Abomasnow, and that is one huge threat off of his team, and one more to go. The Cryogonal that comes out next is not a threat. It does outspeed us, however, to confuse us with Confuse Ray, which is very annoying because we do in fact hurt ourselves in confusion. Not wanting to risk 11 further, it is time to swap in one of those fodder Pokemon. I don't know which one I want to bring in and ultimately decide to bring 2 in. It does have a great move in Acrobatics that it learned via level up. We come in on a Flash Cannon that does very minimal damage, and then we can outspeed and actually one-shot this physically frail Cryogonal, leaving only the Avalugg. The Avalugg, however, is not physically frail. It has a very high defense, so I set up a Leech Seed on it, and this is where we finally lose a Pokemon as Avalanche takes out 2. It was a crit, but that crit didn't matter. We were dead to a one-shot no matter. Now we can bring in 10, and the plan here is to fire off Surfs and hopefully knock this thing out. I do see that it does over half of its health, and we get hit with an Avalanche that again would have KO'd us if it had crit. The Leech Seed chip brings this thing into healing range, so a Hyper Potion from Wolfric is a little bit annoying, but Surf drops it right back down to the health it was at. Leech Seed chip, one more Hyper Potion, and now we should be able to take this thing out with a couple of Surfs. This was a very sad loss, losing 2, though it wasn't going to see any screen time after this gym. It just sucks. I always want to do these runs deathless, and our luck finally caught up. And now the only thing between us and the Elite Four is Serena on Victory Road. The final battle with Serena here on Victory Road is actually one I'm not that scared of. I have a plan going forward, and I'm ready for her Pokemon. We have a very nice move pool. I lead 8. The whole reason to lead 8 here is so that when we get hit with Fake Out, we do quite a bit of chip damage with Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet back to the Meowstic. The Meowstic is also going to go for Shadow Ball, so we can bring 3 in and set up the rain for the Delphox that is going to come out next. Unfortunately for us, this Pokemon does have Psychic-type moves, so it's a little bit risky to be in here, but as we've done so many times before, we can survive the Psychics. Which we do, sitting at 61 HP before Leftovers Recovery. Now we can take this thing out with an Energy Ball, no problem, and we are in prime position for the Delphox. The Delphox comes out next, and we are going to be able to outspeed it. Roserade's base speed is so good, and we did a lot of speed EV training, so a base 100 power water-type Weather Ball one-shots. That's all she wrote, really. Serena does have 3 more Pokemon, but again, I'm not worried about them. The Altaria comes out, and it's a swap into 11 if I can figure out where it is on the team. And we're going to change the rain to Hail. We are going to get hit with a Confide on the swap in, which doesn't matter because we're a physical attacker, and a Stab, quad super effective Ice Punch is going to take out the Altaria. The Absol is in next, and I could probably knock this thing out with a couple of Ice Punches, but it does have Swords Dance and can be a little bit scary, so I swap into 1 on that aforementioned Swords Dance. Luckily for us, Absol doesn't go for Quick Attack, though it wouldn't have done much, even with the +2, a Hammer Arm that is Stab and super effective one-shots. Her last Pokemon is a Jolteon. All of my Pokemon are Grass types, so I'm not really worried about this Speedy Fox Dog thing, and I bring 11 back in. We do get hit with a Discharge, and it does very minimal damage, but it gets the Paralysis. Well, that is annoying because we get hit with another Discharge, and we stay paralyzed. Alright, another Discharge. Guess what? Paralysis. Another Discharge, this time getting a critical hit, but we don't stay paralyzed and can hit an Earthquake to one-shot the Jolteon. And this puts us at the Elite Four. We are leveled up and ready to take them on. We have won the Chestnut with Hammer Arm, Spiky Shield, Wood Hammer, and Rock Slide. 3, the Rose Raid with Energy Ball, Weather Ball, Sludge Bomb, and Rain Dance. 7, the Jumpluff with Bullet Seed, Acrobatics, Sleep Powder, and U-Turn. This Pokemon has been absolutely amazing. That's why I'm bringing it into the Elite Four. It's just had a special place. 8, the Ferrothorn with Iron Head, Power Whip, Aerial Ace, and Payback. 10, the Ludicolo with Energy Ball, Rain Dance, Surf, and Ice Beam. And rounding out the team is 11, the Abomasnow with Ice Punch, Ice Shard, Earthquake, and Wood Hammer. Now, the Elite Four can be done in any order, so I decided to take on the easiest of the four, Seabold and his water types. Against his Clawitzer, we are going to lead 1, and we should have a relatively easy time in this battle. Clawitzer is going to go down to a stab super effective Wood Hammer, and unfortunately for us, we are going to bait in the Starmie because of our fighting type. But we have a plan and a counter to this Pokemon in 8. So we're going to swap in 8 who can resist all of Starmie's attacks much better. We also have the move Payback, which does double damage if we move after the other Pokemon, and since we're so damn slow, we're always going to move last. We can two-shot the Starmie after a Light Screen and a Surf does minimal damage, and this is going to bring out the Barbaracle. Now, I didn't look up movesets or anything for Seabold here, and I probably should have, because the Barbaracle has Cross Chop. I didn't know that. So I get dropped to 15 HP before a Power Whip connects, and it is quad super effective, taking out the Barbaracle. That was a very unnecessary risk, but that's me not doing full research, just kind of being lazy. Now, as the Gyarados comes out, I had an option here to bring in 1 that has super effective Rock Slides or 11, and ultimately decided to bring in 11 because this Gyarados has Ice Fang and is a little bit scary. It is going for Earthquake, though, to knock out 8, which we tank very nicely. With the chip damage from Hail and neutral Ice Punches, we can actually two-shot the Gyarados. It does up its speed and attack, though, with Dragon Dance, which is a little bit concerning. Now we're outsped, and we do get hit with that aforementioned Ice Fang, taking us to 67 HP before we knock it out with 1 more Ice Punch. I figured Drasna and her Dragon-type Pokemon would be the next easiest challenge for me, and I do a very similar strategy that you've seen before. We lead 11 to set up the Hail with Snow Warning, and we're quickly going to swap into 3 because Dragalge here has Poison-type moves. We should be able to take this thing out with a Weather Ball, and then the Noivern is going to come in, we're going to outspeed, and that is the whole plan here. Sludge Bomb does a decent amount of damage, though we resist, and now we can fire off that Weather Ball, unfortunately not doing as much damage as I thought it would. Sludge Bomb gets a critical hit down to 34 HP, and then 24 HP with the chip damage from Hail. Now we're curing up the chip damage from Hail with leftovers, so after a full restore, we can actually stay in and hit this thing with a couple of back-to-back Weather Balls, never really being in risk, but sitting at very low health, and that's the Dragalge taken out. The whole reason that we did this strategy was for the Noivern, that is a very scary Pokemon that we should be able to outspeed in one shot. I should have done some calcs for this battle, but, you know, sometimes I like to risk things, live life on the edge. A base 100 power Ice-type Weather Ball does in fact one-shot the Noivern very nicely. Our next Pokemon is going to be Altaria. The Hail is going to stop, so we're going to need to swap as we cannot stay in against this Pokemon. 3 has done its job. I do not want to risk her. She is very pivotal for a future battle. We bring 11 back in, who sets up the Hail once again with Snow Warning, and then Altaria goes for a Cotton Guard, raising its defense. This means that we don't actually one-shot it with that quad super effective Ice Punch, and it sets up another Cotton Guard before Drasna uses up her last full restore to fully heal it. Luckily for us, Ice Punch does a decent amount of damage, and then the Hail Chip brings it right to half, so we should be able to knock this thing out with another combo, but we get a high roll with our Ice Punch knocking it out. Our last Pokemon is Druddigon. We actually outspeed this Pokemon and can one-shot it with an Ice Punch. Very nice. Now, Wickstrom and his Steel types are third up for us. We don't have a great matchup here, but we don't have a terrible matchup either. His Klefki does have Prankster Spikes, which can be annoying swapping our Pokemon around, and his Scizor in the back is very scary with Stab super effective X-Scissor against our entire team. Now, seeing that we get off an Earthquake means Klefki's going for Flash Cannon, and if that had crit, it would have one-shot. Whoops. The chip from Hail does bring it low enough to where Wickstrom burns a full restore. We hit it with Ice Punch for a little bit of damage, and then the chip from Hail brings this thing low enough where another Earthquake is going to take it out, so that is one threat off the field. Klefki's a decent Pokemon. Aegislash comes out next, and I'm sure this thing is going for Iron Head, so we're going to swap in 8, who can resist it very nicely and deal quite a bit of damage back with Iron Barbs, Rocky Helmet, and then Chip from Hail. 3 different forms of chip damage. Very nice. Now, unfortunately, this thing does like to go for King Shield, which is like Protect, but it lowers your attack, and it does just that, so annoying. It also has Sacred Sword, which is super effective against us, but we should be able to survive a non-critical hit. Seeing a Sacred Sword, we might have been able to survive a critical hit there. We do some chip with Iron Barbs and the Rocky Helmet, and then Payback is enough to take it out. The second threat off the field. Probopass is baited out next because this thing has Earth Power, so we should be able to get a free swap in to 7. Sure enough, we bring 7 in and it goes for Earth Power. We can break Probopass's Sturdy with a U-turn and bring in 10. We are going to get hit with a Power Gem, which is Stab, but we should be able to tank it very nicely, and it does very minimal damage. Now we can fire off a Surf that should be able to take out the Probopass, but it doesn't. It gets an extremely low roll, leaving this thing at a sliver, so we tank another Power Gem. Wickstrom uses his last full restore. We hit this thing with an Energy Ball, and then a Surf to take it out. His last Pokemon is the X-Scissor, and this Pokemon I've been kind of scared of since we started this battle. We should learn Explosion, that would be fun, right? As it comes out, I do need to swap, and the plan is to bring in 1 who should be able to tank the X-Scissor's a little bit better than the rest of the team. Seeing what X-Scissor does on the swap in, I'm a little less scared. We hit a Hammer Arm for just over half. This does drop our speed, which is annoying, so we get hit with an Iron Head and then another X-Scissor down to 30 HP. That was a bit risky, but we ultimately knock out the Scizor, and we did it deathless. Which now brings us to Malva, the scariest Elite Four member for this run. She's got a team full of Fire-type Pokemon, they're fast, and they hit frickin' hard. 3 is the key. We're going to set up Rain Dance. This should nerf any Fire-type moves, but Pyroar opts to go for Noble Roar. That's going to lower our attack and our special attack, and that is very concerning. We fire off that base 100 power Weather Ball, and it one-shots the Pyroar. Our base speed on 3 here is going to allow us to outspeed even the Talonflame, and we actually one-shot with Weather Ball. Is this going to be a sweep? Chandelure should also go down to a Weather Ball, and the only Pokemon that might be bulky enough to survive is coming out last, her Torkoal. Luckily in this generation, Torkoal doesn't have Drought. Otherwise, this would be a very, very different battle. We can outspeed and hit it with a Weather Ball, and it was a one-shot sweep from 3. Malva was probably the easiest of the Elite Four, actually. Champion Diantha has a pretty stacked team. She's got some great Pokemon and rivals, in my opinion, Cynthia of Generation 4. Her Hawlucha is not one of those Pokemon, however, because our Secret Weapon 7 can come in, outspeed, and one-shot with Stab Super Effective Acrobatics. Honestly, this Pokemon is the MVP of the run. I know you've seen more screen time with 3, but trust me, it's the runner-up. And then 11 is the assist champion of the run. Aurorus is baited in with Ice-type moves because of our quad weakness, and we U-turn out. We're going to bring 1 in with a held Yachi Berry that we got on Route 19, but Blizzard just misses, so it doesn't even matter. A quad super effective Stab Hammer Arm one-shots the Aurorus, and I was hoping that Tyrantrum would come out next. Unfortunately, we see Goodra. Goodra's got Fire Blast, so we're going to need to swap up our plan here and bring in 10. 10 comes in and can tank the Fire Blast very nicely because it's not Stab, and it's only neutral damage. I decide to set up the Rain to nerf Fire Blast that much more, and Goodra opts to go for Dragon Pulse instead. Why not? It is very risky to stay in here as we're dead to another Dragon Pulse, but rather than bringing 11 in, we're just going to go for Ice Beam and see what it does. It does over half, and it's my turn to freeze, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Now, rather than risking 10 further, I decide to bring in 11. 11 should be able to knock out the Goodra and then bait in the Tyrantrum, which is the scariest Pokemon on her team. Guja stays frozen through all of this, and we can knock it out with an Ice Punch. Nice. The Tyrantrum is baited out next, and I do not have much good against this Pokemon, so we just fire off an Ice Punch that does over half, and then we get hit with a nasty Head Smash that one-shots. But the recoil damage knocks out the Tyrantrum, so 11's death was not in vain. It does suck to lose a second Pokemon this far into the run. We made it to the end before we even lost a single Pokemon. These grass types have done amazing, considering Kalos not being very fair to the Pokemon. Now as the Gourgeist comes out, I bring 8 in. This is going to be the Pokemon that takes out this one and the Gardevoir in the back. Payback is going to do some decent damage, but it goes for Trick or Treat, adding the Ghost type to us. Interesting. Since we didn't one-shot it with Payback, it's going to go for Phantom Force, which is very annoying. We have to wait, let it hit us with Phantom Force. It's going to do some decent damage because we are now part Ghost type. Iron Barbs and the Rocky Helmet does some chip, and then Payback finally takes this thing out. Now at this point, I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on and didn't notice the Ghost type change here. So as the Gardevoir comes out, I probably should have swapped as we're baiting a Shadow Ball, but I decided to stay in, let this thing Mega Evolve. It of course is going to outspeed us and hit us with a nasty Shadow Ball, but we tank it on 22 HP and can one-shot the Gardevoir with a stab super effective Iron Head, and that is the end of the run. Just like every run I've ever done, this one was extremely fun to play. We had some great grass types to choose from, and there was a ton of them to use. So we had a little bit of wiggle room if things didn't go our way, because Kalos is relatively unfair to the grass type. We still need to play with the water types to give a fair shake at all three of Game Freak's children, if you will. But this was a great run. There were some Pokemon I didn't use, like the Bellsprout that we could have caught, and then the 2 Ghost types that are also partially grass types. We will use them in a future run because we still have the Ghost type to do. As I said, this was extremely fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video as well. There was great synergy on the team, and some old Pokemon really shined through, like 7 there. Just a phenomenal Pokemon. I'm extremely happy with the run. It sucks that we had 2 deaths, but we made it through, and everybody deserves a spot in the limelight. 11, you were amazing. All of these Pokemon were amazing. If you guys enjoyed this video, you know the routine. Leave a like, leave a comment, consider subscribing if you've made it this far into the video. Hell, if you are subscribed, go ahead and check. You might not be. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I will see you on the next one.